We continue now at the top of Daf Chav Beis Amud Beis in Meseches Bava Basra. This is Bava Basra Daf 22b. On the previous Amud, the Mishnah said that if a person is building a wall, he has to be 4 amos away from the wall of his neighbor. But the issue was that the Mishnah implied that there was a first wall that was built, and apparently it was built closer. It was built within 4 amos, and so the Gemara asked, how did that first wall get built? And so now Rav Yehuda answers, what the Mishnah means to say is as follows: Haba lismoch, if somebody wants to build this wall nearby, lo yismoch, he can't do it, alim kein hirchik mimenu arba amos, unless he's 4 amos away. And Rashi says, Haba lismoch mitchila, we're not talking about a second wall. The first person building a wall, if he wants to build a wall nearby, mitchila kosel etzel kosel chaver, if he wants to build a wall near the wall of his friend, he has to leave at least 4 amos. And so the Gemara asks on this interpretation, Maskif lo Rava, Rava asks, V'hamisha yakos lo samach lekosel chaveru katani. But it says in the Mishnah that the wall was already near the wall of his neighbor. So it does seem to imply that there was a first wall. Elo amar Rava, rather Rava says, Hachi katani, this is what the Mishnah means to say. Misha yakos lo samach lekosel chaveru berichuk arba amos. If somebody's wall was near the wall of his neighbor, but it was 4 amos away, v'nafal, and it falls, lo yismoch lo kosel acher, he shouldn't build nearby another wall. Now he's replacing a wall that fell. He has to be at least 4 amos away, just as he was with the first wall. My time, and what's the reason? Because the fact that people are walking over here, it's actually beneficial for over there. And Rashi explains, "V'nafal lo yismoch." Again, it falls down. He shouldn't get too close. Lo yikravenu l'tzad kosel chaveru. He shouldn't have it go closer to the wall of his friend. Davsha dehacham ali lahasam. The stepping, the fact that people are walking over here, that helps over there. Meaning, mashadoshin beregel bein shnei haksalim. The fact that people are walking with their feet between the 2 walls, tamid all the time. Moel l'shnei haksalim. It actually helps both of the walls. Lahakshos karkois, because it makes the land a little harder. Yisodos haksalim v'lo yimotu. That way the foundations of the walls are more solid. Now Tosas over here point out, Elo amar Rava, Rava says, Hachi kamer, here's what the Mishnah means, Misha yakoslo, Hiksha Rivam, the Rivam asks, even with this answer of Rava, but why do you have to have a case where there's already a wall and it falls and you're building a second wall? You had a wall that was 4 amos away, it fell. Listen, you should just say, you shouldn't have your wall too close to the wall of the neighbor. It should just say you always have to build the wall 4 amos away, because it's not only in a situation where there was already a wall that fell. And that's exactly what Tosas here say. You can't say that only in a situation like this, where it was already 4 amos away, that the first person already distanced himself, only in that scenario you're not allowed to get too close. Tosas say you can't say that answer because of the Gemara later on, because if so, the Gemara later on, the questions don't really make sense. The Gemara later on asks, Taima shalo yafil imishum sulam avol mishum dav shalo. We'll see that Gemara as the Gemara continues, but the point over here is that Tosas is saying that the Gemara does not mean to say that it's only this second wall in this scenario that it needs to be 4 amos away, but it is a general halacha. You're building a wall, it has to be 4 amos away from the wall of the neighbor. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rav, Rav says, Lo shanu ala kosel gina, the halacha in the Mishnah is only true by the wall of a garden, avol kosel chatzar, but let's say it's the wall of a courtyard, in bal ismoch somech, if he wants to go very close, he could. Rav Oshia says, Echad kosel gina v'echad kosel chatzar. It doesn't matter if it's the wall of a garden or the wall of a courtyard. In bal ismoch, if he wants to go very close, eino somech, he's not allowed to go that close. And Omer Rav Yossi Bar Chanina says, V'lo pligi, really Rav and Rav Yoshia, they're not really arguing. Ha bi'ir yeshana, ha bi'ir chadash. In one case we're talking about an older city, in the other case we're talking about a newer city. And Rashi explains, again, this is Rav, it has to be only by the wall of a garden. The idea is that a wall of a garden, there's not a lot of stepping on the inside, so you need people to walk on the outside, it's beneficial. That's why Rav said it's specifically true by a kosel gina, by a kosel chatzar, people walk anyhow. Rav Oshia said it's true by a kosel chatzar also, and the Gemara made a distinction between an old city and a new city. And Rashi explains the ir chadosh in a new city, shadayin lo nidoshu, where people haven't yet walked, af kosel chatzar, tzricha davsha. That's where we'll say that the wall of the chatzar needs people to be able to walk, so you do need that distance in a situation of a new city. Masha ein ken, you don't need that when it comes to an older city. And the Gemara continues, Tanan, we learned in our Mishnah, hachalonos, when it comes to windows, bein milmalon, bein milmaton, bein mikonegdon, whether you're building the wall above, below, or opposite arba amos, you always need 4 amos of distance. V'tani alam, we have a braysa on the Mishnah that explains, milmalon, when it comes to the wall going above the windows, why does it have to be more than 4 amos above? Kedei shelo yotzitz v'yira, so you shouldn't be able to look in. And milmatan, when it comes to below, shelo yamod v'yira, because if it's within 4 amos, you'll just stand on the wall and you'll be able to look in. Umichanegdan, and also if it's opposite the window, it has to be at least 4 amos, shelo yafil, that it shouldn't become too dark. And so the Gemara says, Taima shelo yafil. The whole reason over here why you have to have this distance of 4 amos is just that it shouldn't get too dark. Avol mishum dav shelo, but in terms of davsha, the reason that you have to have 4 amos in order that people should walk there and harden the earth, apparently, that's not an issue. So don't we see from our Mishnah that this is not really an issue, this idea of davsha? And the Gemara answers, Hacha b'mayaskin, and here what are we talking about? Beba min hatzad, where it's coming from the side. And Rashi explains, milmalan, from above, tzarech l'hagbi ashir, the wall has to be high enough, it has to be even more than 4 amos higher than the windows, shelo yotzitz b'shanu al kosel, that way he won't be able to look in the windows when he leans on the wall, v'yashbel rosho v'yira derech halonos b'veis chaveru, he'll be able to look through the windows into the house of his friend, and shelo yamad, also when it's lower than the windows, it has to be low enough that he can't just stand on the wall, al rosh ove kosel over here, he can't just stand on the wall and look into the windows. And Rashi continues, umichanegdan tzarech laharchik, and again, opposite the window, you also need a distance of 4 amos, kedei shelo yafil, in order that it's not too dark. Time is shelo yafil, and so the Gemara said the only reason why it's an issue is that you shouldn't make it dark. B'sheyesh chalonos, meaning to say, when there are windows in this wall of the neighbor, so then there's a problem that you're going to make it dark. Avol mishum davsha, but apparently having people walk there, b'she'ein sham chalonos, let's say it's just a wall without any windows, lo, apparently that's not an issue. Alma lo chashin l'davsha, don't we see from our Mishnah that there's no concern for davsha, there's no concern that people should walk there? And the Gemara answers, min hatzad, we're talking here about a wall that is from the side, essentially it's perpendicular to the wall with the windows. She'ein ha-kosel ha'achron mahalich la'orech kosel rishon, we're not talking about where the second wall is going along, it's parallel along the length of the first. Element hatzadu, but rather it comes from the side. Im zemi mizrach l'mayr zeba mitzaf and l'darum, if this one's east-west, the other one's north-south, again the point is it's perpendicular. V'rosh ovi of keneged hachalon, now the thickness of the wall is actually right opposite this window, umafil, and it causes darkness. That's why here in this particular situation, there's no concern of davsha, dahupur, so that's just a little amount that people aren't walking, they're walking everywhere else, so davsha is not really an issue in this particular case. And the Gemara continues, v'kama, now how much of a distance do you have to have between the wall that's perpendicular and the wall with the window? Now Rashi here explains, v'kama kadesh lo yafil, meaning going on the case opposite the wall where you don't want it to cause darkness, so how far back do you have to go that it shouldn't darken? This is a question, says Rashi, l'tana de Brisa, this is specifically a question on the Tana of the Brisa, to lo yoev shira, because the Brisa doesn't actually give a shir, it doesn't say arba amos like the Mishnah, so the question is how far back does the person have to go? And the Gemara continues, Amar Yeva chamua da Ashin bar Nadvach mishmei de Rav, Rav Yeva, the father-in-law of Ashin bar Nadvach, says in the name of Rav, kimole rochav chalon, he has to distance himself the same measurement as the width of the window itself. But the Gemara says, V'halo meitzitz, but if he's not so far away, if that's all, so can't he peer into the window? Rashi explains, V'halo meitzitz keva de samuch, if it's so close, aval bishu magbio yachol hatzitz, so even if he's going to make it a high wall, still he's able to look in. And the Gemara says to that, Amar Rav Zavid says, B'madir is koslo, the case is that the wall is slanted, you can't go on top of the wall anyhow. Rashi says, B'madir is koslo, osa rosh koslo madron, he makes a slant on the top of the wall, u'meshapo litzan hachalonos, it's slanted towards the windows, if it's not fit to stand on, and it's not fit to lean on, so therefore it's not such a concern. The only concern is the darkness. As long as your distance, the width of that window, it's going to be okay. But the Gemara says, 1 second, but in our Mishnah it says 4 amos, now you're saying that in the Brisa, it's not 4 amos, it's a different measurement. What happened to what the Mishnah said? And the Gemara says, Lo kasha, that's not difficult, kan meru achachas, kan mishtei ruchos. In one case we're talking where it's only on one side, in the other case it's on 2 sides, meaning to say it's 2 walls. Rashi says, mishtei ruchos, shnei ksolim zeh keneged zeh, mishnei tzidei hachalon. Let's say you have 2 walls, one opposite the other on both sides of the window. There already you need more space, you need dalet amos, so that it shouldn't darken, it shouldn't prevent the light from going in through the window. And the Gemara continues, Tashma, coming here a proof from the following Mishnah. This is the Mishnah coming up. It says you have to distance the wall from the roof gutter 4 amos, in order that you can stand up the ladder, meaning in order that the owner of the gutter will be able to stand up a ladder to climb up there and clean it out. And so the Gemara says, Taima mishum sulam, the only reason you need a distance of dalet amos is because of the need of the ladder. Aval mishum dav shalo, but apparently to have people walking there is not really an issue. And the Gemara answers, Hachab Ma'askin, and here what are we talking about? B'mazchela mishupas. We're talking about a slanted gutter, meaning there's area to walk underneath of the gutter, so the walking is not an issue. Di misham davshahu hakazal vasi to say, because if the issue is davsha to walk there, people are able to walk underneath anyhow. Therefore, the only reason of the distance of the Dalet Amos is in order to put a ladder there to be able to get up there and clean it out. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah, Marchikin es hasula min hashovach arba amos. A person has to distance a ladder from the dovecote 4 amos, kedeshalo tikbots hanemiya, so that this nemiya, which is a weasel-like creature, it doesn't jump in. V'as hakosel min hamazchela dalet amos, and the wall has to be distanced from the gutter 4 amos, kedesh yezokev es hasulam, in order to be able to stand up the ladder. And Rashi explains, Marchikin es hasulam min hashovach im yesh la zeh shovach b'chatzero samach lekosel shebein shtei hachatzeros. If a person has a dovecote in his chatzer and it's near the wall that separates 2 courtyards, v'chaveiro, now the neighbor bo lahamid sulam b'chatzero, he wants to put up a ladder in his courtyard, eitzel hakosel, that's going to be near the wall, yarchikeno min hashovach arba amos, he has to make sure that it's 4 amos at least away from the dovecote, kedei shelo tikbots hanemiya, so that the nemiya shouldn't jump min hasulam l'shovach. We're afraid that the nemiya is going to jump from the ladder to the dovecote. V'tarog es hayona v'hichai katana. Again, it's going to kill the doves, and again, the nemiya is a wild, small animal. And the Gemara says, Leima masnisan delok Rabbi Yossi. Let's say that our Mishnah is not like Rabbi Yossi. To eat Rabbi Yossi, because if it followed Rabbi Yossi, Amar Rabbi Yossi says, Zechofer b'soch shalo, this person can dig within his own property. V'zen oteya b'soch shalo, and this person can plant within his own property. He doesn't have to worry about the damage that will be done to the neighbor. And Rashi here explains, Leima masnisan delok Rabbi Yossi, the polig b'seifa de pirkin. Rabbi Yossi is the one that argues at the end of our perek, benoteya ilon samach labor, in a case where a person plants a tree near a pit. V'tuva mili ika b'masnisan. Now Rashi notes there are many things in the Mishnayos over here, devadai lav Rabbi Yossi, that certainly are not like Rabbi Yossi. Elaleima avzu, the Gemara just means, let's say even this Mishnah is also not like Rabbi Yossi. The sulam v'shovach delok Rabbi Yossi, these cases in the Mishnah of the ladder and the shovach, let's say that this case is not like Rabbi Yossi. And the Gemara says, Afilu Tamer Rabbi Yossi, you could even say that the Mishnah follows Rabbi Yossi, Ha'amar Rav Ashi, because Rav Ashi says, Ki avinan bei Rav Kahana, when I was by Rav Kahana, Havamri said, Modi Rabbi Yossi would admit, Begiri Didei, when it's his arrows, Rashi here explains, Begiri Didei, Bechitzim Haboim Lo, Miyad Gufo Shal Balabayas Mamish, if the arrows come from the Balabayas himself, it's like a direct kind of damage, or a more direct kind of damage, so there Rabbi Yossi would admit that it's problematic. Hachanami, so here also, Zimnin devahadi demonachle, sometimes while he is placing it, this is talking specifically about the case of the ladder and the dovecote, so Yosva Bechor, so it's sitting inside its hole, meaning the animal, the nemiya rather, is sitting inside its hole, the kafsa, and it jumps. The Gemara says, V'hagramu, but still, isn't that just gramu? It's an indirect kind of damage. Amr Rav Tuvi Bar Masna, Rav Tuvi Bar Masna says, Zos Omeris, this shows, grama b'nizak and asur, that grama, when it comes to damages, is in fact asur. And Rashi explains, Devahade demonachle ba'od she'oches besula, meaning while he's still holding the ladder, so kafsa, so then the nemiya is going to jump at that point in time. Grama b'nizak and asur, and the Gemara says, grama by nizikin is asur. V'afilu l'man do'amar de'lo doin dina de garmi. Rashi says, even according to the one who does not judge cases of garmi, upater milashalim, and it's pater in terms of actually having to pay, but still asr ligrom, it's still forbidden to cause that kind of damage. And therefore, if he is coming to set up something which is going to cause this kind of grama damage, this kind of indirect damage, so his neighbor is able to stop him. And the Gemara continues, Rav Yosef havale hanu toli dahave. Rav Yosef had these certain small palm trees, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Chav Gimel Amud Aleph.